5 seconds of courage may change your life.
What are you doing being one of the 1% that the other 99 aren't doing?
That is a huge factor in my productivity.
You mentioned it earlier. You used to be 400 pounds, dude.
Here's the biggest difference in a fighter and a bully is both people. When I would make a little money, I'd be like, cool, yeah, we're good, right? Like, we made a little money this month, like, don't worry about it. And I failed that business. I ended up selling my store out to my dad. I missed, like, my dad's birthday party, and I had to run laps after, my brother's graduation. Like, I have to take sweats everywhere I go with me, and I'll, see all that. To you, it's just like, oh, step in the ring, ring the bell. 3 minutes later, this guy's getting paid. That's a great deal.
Being a kickboxer for how many years now?
I've been a professional kickboxer for 11. I've been a kickboxer overall for 13, 14, 15 years.
Okay, so that's a special kind of crazy all on its own, number one. But bare knuckle fighting, okay?
Yeah.
First bare knuckle fight in the state of Oklahoma. Not only that, first winner of the bare knuckle fight in the state of Oklahoma, which I knew that was going to happen anyway when I went to the fight. But I want to talk about the mindset of a fighter, okay? Because everything that we do when we're in business, because you're a business owner, you own a couple of different businesses, you get in the ring, you've got that fight mentality off the mat and on the mat. And I want to talk about what your mindset is before you go into a fight. What's the difference? Average everyday conversation between you and then when you're about to go into the ring.
A few ways I can relate this and try to make it make more sense to you, easier than be like, well, when you're fighting and you don't know because you haven't been fighting. So,
Right.
You have a coach or a mentor?
I did several actually for different reasons.
She's really smart. Michael Jordan once said everybody needs a coach, right? No matter how good you are, you need a coach. So before you go to a business meeting or before you approach a big business deal, what goes through your mind, right? Well, if your approach, in your mind, you're set you're running your mentor's words through your head. So you're running your coach's words through your head. So you're kind of pre-planning, okay, I need to approach this at this angle. This is how we've decided this is going to work. Just have to execute the plan at hand. It's the exact same thing. You're backstage, you're ready for the fight. It's not about brutality or anger. It's okay, me and my coaches, we come up with this plan for this opportunity that was here before us for this specific opponent. And all I'm going to do is execute that to the best of my ability. So for the bare knuckle match, I was fighting a guy taller than me, long arms, great reach, had some boxing experience. He's been an MMA fighter for years, been fighting almost as long as I have, which makes us old dogs in this game. And the game plan was close the distance, right? To stay on top of him. So, because if he gets me at range, he has the advantage. But that was me and my coaches. We drilled that weeks and weeks and weeks, months in advance. We just drilled it. Close the range, move your head, stay close, close the range, just over and over again. So that when you're in the ring, you want it to, and it doesn't always work out this way. But the same thing when you're pitching a deal, you want it to come natural. I know how to do this. I've done this before. And that's the idea you're shooting for. It's mind, muscle, memory, in the ring. But backstage is all you're doing. You're just running through your head the same processes that you've planned out to make, to make your sales, to get your goal, right? Over and over again.
You see, obviously, the movies, you go backstage, you see people warming up, they're shadow boxing, they're doing this, doing that, getting ready to fight, hyped up. The more experienced fighters like yourself are laying back on a bench, taking a nap, chilling. It's almost like you're just getting in the zone.
You kind of come to the longer you fight and the more successful you are, the later on the card you fight. So let's say the event starts at 7, the boxing commission, just to make sure we're all checked in, we're all there, we'll have to be there at 3 or 4, right? So if the show starts at 7 or 8, I have to be there at 3 or 4. I'm fighting late on the card, I'm fighting 9:30, right? So if I'm backstage, right, when you're backstage for a long time, you're not dialed in, right? You're not okay, this shit's about to go down, right? You're kind of lackadaisical, checking on your buddies, talking to other fighters that you know, making sure everybody's in a good place, telling the younger guys to calm down. They still got plenty of time because you get younger guys come back there for their first fight, and we'll be 3 o'clock show starts at 7. We're hours out, and they'll be back there, just going to work in front of a mirror, and it's hey bud, you're not warming up. You're gonna cool down a dozen times between now and the fight. Just chill, just breathe, just relax. your nerves settle in a little bit. And once you've done it for a long time, like it's not, that's something that was really different about bare knuckle for me. It was like kind of like being a kid again, right? Because I was pretty amped up, especially when I started getting my hands wrapped and everything. Because like it's different, I got shoes on, kickboxing, you get to wear shoes. I got gloves on. You always have gloves on. So the differences were great enough to me that like, it was like kind of being a kid again, kind of doing all. That's why I want to do it again. It's because it was kind of like the first time. It was my first time bare knuckle, but kind of like the first time fighting all over again. And I've kickboxed for so long that it's not, it sounds really ridiculous to be like, well, it's kind of boring. It's not that it's boring. It's still a fight, like it's still super competitive. Like you can still get hurt really easy, but I've done it so many times. It's just, same old song and dance.
Almost like a new rush.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So tell me the difference between the rush of winning that fight versus winning in your I won't say average everyday fight because there's no such thing, but winning a normal kickboxing fight versus that bare knuckle fight. What was the difference in the field? Was there a difference?
I wouldn't say there's a big difference in the actual winning the fight. The biggest difference for me was like when they brought up the opportunity of doing the first one, when the XFN and Dale Paula Cook brought up the opportunity of doing the first bare knuckle boxing match in Oklahoma history, I nonchalantly at the after party of that show, which I didn't fight on, nonchalantly poked him. I was like, hey, you got to put me on that, put me in the running for that bare knuckle. And he's like, well, we'll see what happens when it gets here. And then I get a call a couple months out from the fight and like, hey, well, wait, you fighting for that bare knuckle fight. But the reason I wanted that was because it was a chance to touch history. And very few times in your life do you something like, call it arrogant or whatever you want, somewhere on a piece of paper, my name went down as the very first bare knuckle boxer in Oklahoma history. And 1,000 years from now, I will still be the very first bare knuckle boxer in Oklahoma history. Like, you can't take that away. And so for me, like, that was the rush, right? Like, now I want to do it again because I had a ton of fun doing it. Yeah. But being the first one, like, when the fight was over, like, that just kind of comes over. You're like, man, like, we did it. Like, we made history, right? We made history, and winners tell the story of history, and we won. So, like,
That's right. Now you get to paint the picture.
Right?
What is your advice to someone that would be looking to fight, first of all?
Oh.
Okay, so first time they're ever going to get in a ring. Number one, do they need to be coming out, be bare knuckle fighting? Number one, obviously. I would think that would be a no, but who knows? But that would be, yeah. So tell me what if you're preparing somebody mentally and physically for getting into the fight, right? Getting into the ring. What's some of the basics you want them to know? I mean, I'm not just talking about like fight dynamics. I'm talking about really your headspace.
It's really hard when you're training someone for their first fight because when you get in the ring for your first time ever, your adrenaline is going to like overwhelm you, right? So you're going to get in there, you're going to square off, they're going to say, let's go, fight starts, and like, depending on the person, but for the first 15 to 45 seconds, you're going to feel like an unstoppable force of nature. It doesn't matter if you're winning or losing. You're just going to be like, hey, this ain't so bad. And then your adrenaline's going to dump, and you're going to be like, I can't breathe or move, and I don't know why. That's just because, like, you're in front of 3,000 screaming fans, or even a smaller show. You're in front of 300 screaming fans in a ring, just you and one other man, right? All eyes on you. Nothing's missed that you do. So, like, it's really hard to prepare people for that part of it. Mm-hmm. If I was to give anyone advice that was looking to fight, I would tell them to do something else. For sure. But some people are just, exhibit A. Some people you just like to do it, and it's just a good outlet for them. Yeah. But if I, like, my girlfriend fights, you know that, and I train her. And preparing her for her first fight, instead of being like, okay, let's go over all this, like let's go over head movement, where your feet going, blah, blah, blah. Like you break it down as much as you can, and you want them to go in like, and my old head coach Mike Egan taught me this. It's you want a few weapons, right? Instead of trying to have this arsenal of tools you can barely use, let's like take a few tools and sharpen them up so you're really good with them, right? Like, if you got a grenade launcher, you don't know how to use it, it's no good to you. Right. If you got a pistol and you're an expert with it, you're a dangerous man. So, like, when she went to her first fight, I was like, hey, we're going to work on low kick and setting your jab up, and that is it. And, like, of course, they see other fighters and, like, oh, there's all this fancy stuff. And I was like, cool. Like, we'll get there. But, like, it's very, very basic. You want to be very basic because, like, if I have a couple good weapons and you don't, and a dozen techniques, but you can throw them all half-assed, you're in a lot of trouble.
Let's talk about defense.
Okay.
So offense, obviously aggressive. When you're teaching somebody to play defense, what's your strategy?
You don't teach people to play defense when they're fighting.
Okay.
There's a really good philosophy. It's like, if you're hitting me, right, that means you have a half guard for sure, right? Because you're throwing a punch, one punch isn't at home. And here, home is right here, right? This is guard. So, like, yeah, you have to learn defense. And there are some fighters that have excellent defense, and they're, like, known for it. Most of them are really good counter punchers, which means when you hit them, they strike back. So when your hand's on the return, they're fast, and they'll hit you back. So once they feel contact is when they go. But I don't like to train head movement, keep your guard high, things like that. Learn how to check kicks. Those are all defensive tactics. But you're always trying to set up your offense, right? So, like, if you're hitting me, I should be hitting you back. I've always fought my fight career like this, but I'll take one to give one. I'll trade with you all day long. That's worked for me a lot of times, and it's not worked for me a few times. So, but defense is where you end up with your back against the wall and your hands up, and some guy's pelting you, and you're just fine. And let's say you have an excellent defense. You're not taking any damage. If he hits you long enough and you don't respond, for the sake of your safety, the referee's going to stop the fight because you're not fighting back. And, you're not in there it's not, how long can I take a beating? Yeah. It's how well can you fight?
Where does your power come from when that guy's exhausted, you're exhausted, maybe he's not even showing exhaustion, but you feel it? Where's your mind go to dig deeper?
Probably different places. I had a couple thoughts when you said that. One, like, if you had to actually break down where you're physically, I know this is not what you're talking about, but you're physically generated power at that point, because you're, like, exhausted. You can barely move. It comes all from technique, right? How well you know how to rotate your shoulders, turn your hips, dig through the ground. That's where you start to generate power. That's why you teach that. Because at first, it's like, oh, yeah, all this muscle and everything. And when you get exhausted, like, your technique's going to generate all your power. Now, the actual question you're asking is, like, where do you find, like, the will to keep fighting? And that's, like, different places. Like, I'm a really bad loser, right? Like, I'm not a sore loser. You beat me. But I don't like to lose, right? Like, I fight. I train to win. So I've never in my life stepped into a fight and been like, man, I'm probably going to lose this fight, right? Like, I'm there to fight. If I'm going to fight, I'm going to win.
Okay.
You said, like, second and third round. My favorite rounds, like, I fought a lot of title fights in my life, defended my title. And so, like, those are championship rounds. And championship rounds are round 4 and round 5. I've never lost a title fight, right? So I've never had someone take me the distance or stand 5 rounds with me and come out the victor. And I don't know, you just train different for them, but, like, I like those later rounds, right? Because it's like, okay, like how durable are you, right? How much abuse can you take? Like, because lots of people, you can relate this to weight training, right? There's lots of times you're like, oh, man, yeah, I just can't do one more. You can do one more, right? There's lots of times, like, I'll go to spot you or something on a lift, and you'll do all the work. But just because I'm there and you're like, oh, okay, there's a safety net here, right? So I'd say that's a good example, like learning to work without a safety net.
Is there anything that you do in business that you do in the ring that seems to be working?
Fight philosophy is, like, what I always tell everyone is, like, short movements, right? And hit first and hit fast, right? That's, like, because if you hit first, like, you always want to be the guy pressing the trigger, pulling the trigger, right? Guy pressing the gas pedal, right? Like, you don't want to be the guy riding along. You want to be the guy with the radio. If life depends on it, you want to be the guy with the gun. Yeah. Same thing in, like, you can relate that some to business. You got to be the guy going to get it, right? You can't be the guy like, oh, yeah, I have a business partner, and he does a lot of work, and I'm kind of just waiting around for this to make me money. Like, you got to go get it. You have – another thing what you said earlier is, like, about defense, like, you have to be on offense. Fighting and business. Life in general, my personal opinion, right? Like, if you're not the guy, like, controlling that gas pedal, if you're not the guy setting the pace, somebody else is setting the pace, and you're tagging along in their story.
I've often said when I keynote speak, you fall to the level of your preparation. Very rarely do people rise to the occasion. And when you fall to that level of preparation, your instincts kick in. Different thought patterns come in. Your training kicks in. All those things, right? That's happened in the military with me. It happens in the fight ring. Those kinds of things. So your preparation for the fight. Let's say you're going to fight 6 months from now. What is your mentality and your training schedule when you're training for that fight? Obviously, you're wanting to prepare. Is there a certain amount of hours, certain amount of... Now, obviously, you got to make weight, you got to do all that kind of stuff. You got to change your diet. You're almost changing a lot of things. So walk me through what that looks like, a picture in the life of someone setting up for a fight.
The thing about like fighting's a little different because like you're like, oh, you got to fight in 6 months, and like the legendary, like a very popular saying in the fight world is like, well, stay ready, you don't got to get ready. As much as a lot of us would like to say we do that, we don't, right? Because there's been plenty of fights I took, like this last one, where I had to get ready. So I was definitely not ready.
Yeah, I watched you. It was awesome.
When you're a professional fighter, or probably any type of professional athlete, a lot of your decisions, and this is something that's gonna be really weird for me when I retire, for sure, because a lot of your decisions, and this can relate to being a business owner, they're filtered through that screen, right? A lot of things you do, like normal people, I feel like they work 9 to 5s, or like that aren't professional athletes, or like preparing for an event of some kind. Like they live their life in this lane, and like, yeah, I make my money, I spend my money, I live here, I have my family, everything's great. And then like there's nothing in between, like, right? And when you own a business, or when you're a professional athlete, or when you're preparing for some great event, like be a marathon run, whatever, there's this filter in between your day-to-day life, like start and end, and everything you do runs through that filter. What I mean by that is like, oh, I'm gonna go out and eat. Oh, I'm gonna go see my buddies. Oh, I'm gonna take this weekend to go do that. Or I'm gonna do this evening. Well, how does that affect my end result? How does it like runs through this filter, right? Can I eat this? Should I drink that? Should I go to this event? Like, what's this environment gonna be like? How's this gonna affect, the future of my business? How's this gonna affect the future outcome of my fight? And it's never ends. Like that filter, like for me, the filter's been in place for a decade, right? Like if I do something, I'm like, well, how's this affect that?
Almost like wearing a different hat. You got to put on a different hat, different mentality, because it's not everyday life anymore. Now we're preparing for a end goal.
Yeah.
Okay. Everything that I stand for, everything that I do, business is war. And if you treat it like war, then you're taking it seriously. Just like a fight, just like you're actually entering the ring. The difference is we're almost entering that ring every day rather than preparing for a fight that's down the road. So you talked about just briefly how, most people perceive that as always be ready for a fight. You're always there. Yeah. You're always, which is not really reality. You're not training in normal everyday life like you would be for that event.
For sure. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Once you couple that with the experience that you have, you already know the mechanics. It's almost like that's built into you. Unless you're changing gears into a bare knuckle fight and things against that fighter. So knowing your enemy, right? So knowing what's coming against us in business, knowing how to battle that stuff in business. Being a business owner, being a fighter, if you would, what would be the advice to someone you would give to being in business and handling it on a day-to-day? Now, with the caveat of knowing if we're going to go into business, we want to win, because nobody likes to lose. Yeah. Nobody. I don't know one person that loves to lose. So we want to win. What does winning look like, right? And what is going to be our opponents? Well, in business, it's just about everything. You get it from all different angles, right? Rather than just one guy in a ring. But even in a ring, you're battling exhaustion. You're battling, this guy's a southpaw, or all these different factors that can come into play. But if you're going to be going against a southpaw, where your defense needs to lie and where your offensive move, like you mentioned. Now you've got to go into the offense at maybe a little different direction. Your normal mechanics won't let you go. When you're transitioning in a fight, when you're transitioning in business, when you're transitioning on your day-to-day, what's your preparation tactic mentally? Let's get outside of the physical.
Okay, I can't use physical. I could use it for representative for a lot of things.
I know.
Mentally, like, it just comes down to, like, the people you can surround yourself with. It comes down to knowledge. Like, how much can you intake? How much knowledge can you intake? Right? And, like, mentally or physically. Right? Like, no matter what you're preparing for, the more you understand it, the more prepared you are. And you could have little to no experience with it, right? Like, for instance, like I know a lot about reptiles. I could break down to you how to catch a very dangerous reptile and do no damage to yourself. And I could do it, and I know you don't like them, right? So you would be scared, which is a good reference because a lot of people do things every day, they're scared. Like those are called successful people. But I could break it down enough times in enough ways and make it simple enough that you like, I can do this, right? I have faith that I can do this and never done it. Apply it to business, right? So I'm in a personal training gym, Elite Training Tulsa. So that came by me easy, right? I know physical fitness, right? I used to be 400 pounds, lost a bunch of weight. I trained to fight. Like I know how to help people lose weight. I know how to do nutrition. I got all that down pat. My second business is I own a nutrition shop, Happy's Nutrition. Um, that that's a whole different realm to me, right? Thank God for my business partner, right? Because he's constantly like doing the homework and sharing with me the knowledge that he gathers because like I know nothing about that. Like I'm very limited in my knowledge about that, but I'm fully comfortable doing it because I have all of his knowledge and he's very knowledgeable about it. Had I not had him, I would have never endured on, or embarked on that second business because lack of knowledge, right? It's like I would never try to build an insurance company. I don't know anything about insurance. But if you came to me with your years of experience, you're like, hey, you want to partner with me in an insurance company? I'd be like, well, yeah, of course. What like, because I know you have this plethora of knowledge, right? And I can absorb that, learn, replicate. Fighting, business, it's that is the same, right? Just trying to take in all, as much knowledge, as much useful knowledge as you can, replicate, reproduce.
With the right partnerships, because we've had a couple of partners that embezzled from our company. We had to kick them out in different ways, all kinds of different things that have happened in the past. The importance of having a business partner that is bringing something of value to the table. Those people that start businesses and they just jump in with their best friend because they're good friends. Well, next thing you know, they're not so good friends anymore because one's doing all the work, the other one's not, and vice versa. You get all this
For sure.
tension. A little different from a coach or mentor standpoint than a fighter, but let's just say you had a coach or a fighter, coach of a fighter that has never fought before, right? They don't know what it's like to get hit in the head. Like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan to get hit in the head, right? So, or hit in the face. I don't know what the exact one is, but the point is getting yourself in a position to where you're going to win. You have to align with the right people.
I have a lot of coaches that would disagree with the fact that you said that it's different from business that aspect. I've known a lot of coaches and seen countless fighters, and the coaches do all the work until they're just out of patience because like fighter won't show up to training, fighter won't do his road work, you know. So it's like you can only pour so much into someone, just like you're saying, have a business partner, being your coach as a fighter. You can only pour so much into someone before they're just not doing anything in return. And then, like in the business world, say me and you are partners, and I'm doing nothing, and you're doing all the work, and the business fails, right? That affects you for the rest of your life. That would be like you carry that around. Well, as a coach, if I'm doing all the work as a coach, right, I'm telling you everything to do, I'm trying my hardest to help you, and you're just being lazy and not doing anything. When we step in the ring, you get beat up. Well, no one goes, "Oh man, that fighter sucks." Everyone goes, "Oh man, you're coach. You need a different coach." Correct. And that's not the issue. Yeah. I've had lots of different coaches. Luckily, all of them phenomenal. But I'm not the best listener. I'm a hard student to have, right? Because like coach tell me something, I'll be like, maybe we'll try that.
Yeah, I get it. And I think that's really being coachable as a fighter is key. Because if you can listen and apply, and even in business or in anything, I don't care what you're selling, I don't care what business you're in, plumbing, doesn't matter, widgets, the value proposition means a lot. But the point is if you're not willing to get out of bed and go to do the work and walk it out, just like a fighter, you got to prep. I will bet on a prepared fighter over a talented fighter any day.
For sure.
Only reason I say that is because talented fighters tend to get a big head and they think they're better than everybody else, right? And then somebody's going to come along that's humble, that listens, that applies, and it's coachable, and they're going to put the work in.
Especially in recent years with the everything the U.S. has been through, we've seen billion-dollar companies go under, right? And they were a talented fighter. They had a big head. They're like, no one can touch us, and they don't exist anymore. And we've seen two kids with a laptop in their bedroom become millionaires.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
They
true.
were just people that are willing to work hard. So
Yeah, and you got to put the hours in.
Yep.
You got to put the hours in. A lot of people want the success, but they're just not willing to do what it takes to be successful.
for sure.
I mean, 99% of the people out there aren't successful for that reason because they're not willing to do what the other 1% is willing to do.
A lot of people too, like made me think this is like Alex Ramosi says, like it's not that you're doing the wrong thing, you're just not doing enough volume of it, right? People be like, oh, he uses a reference where he's handing out flyers, and he's like, yeah, well, I had 1,000 flyers, and I handed them out this week, and the guy's like, oh, the guy that's helping him, his mentor at the time is like, oh no, we need to do like 10,000 a week, and he's like, once he did that, business flourished, and it's like you weren't doing the wrong thing, you just weren't doing near enough of the right thing.
Consistency.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So when you get in and you start training for a fight, or you're starting to train to learn how to do a new business, there are some things that, yeah, you may not be good at. And that's why you have a business partner. But what you want to do is continue to learn what he knows
For sure.
so you can help take burdens off of them. But that's the thing I think with coaches and mentors, and where they miss it a lot is they're not recognizing where that talent might lie and start pouring into people a little bit differently. Maybe, you've heard these, there's no such thing as a bad student, only bad teachers kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? Well, that's true to a certain extent, but what you brought up a minute ago is that students also got to be willing
Yeah.
to learn. You told me when you started training me, you're like, okay, well, you see the sign up there? I'm like, yeah, I see it. It says, you can't out-train a bad diet. And I was fat and I was out of shape and I was trying to get in there and lift and move and do all these different things. And I'm getting worn out. I'm doing all these. And you're just like, see the sign up there? The idea is I wasn't willing to do what it takes to get myself in shape and lose the weight, because even though that sign's there, I don't ignore it. It's just there. And I love that because it really does matter. What you intake matters, right?
Oh, sure.
So mentally,
That's what I was gonna
physically,
say, in
what you
all
put in,
aspects.
right? Yeah. So what do you do mentally in preparation? I mean, a lot of people say they listen to fight songs, or they read self-help books, or they do. What do you do on a regular basis to increase your knowledge base as a business owner, as a fighter? What are you doing being one of the 1% that the other 99 aren't doing?
It just comes back to like kind of what I said earlier about like absorbing knowledge. So like when I have a fight coming up, instead of being like, okay, like let's change the game plan. My old head coach I mentioned earlier, like he said, instead of like adjusting to your opponent, instead of like adjusting to your environment, let's double down on what you do best, right? Because you're always gonna do what you do best, probably better than most other people because it's what you do best. Like, right? So not to keep yourself in a box, but like say you're a southpaw and you have a terrifying left hand, right? Well, we could try to change the game plan, and we could try to like modify how I move and everything, and be like, how can I avoid this left hand and capitalize on him making mistakes with it? Well, I like in kickboxing, especially, like I have really good low kicks, right? I always have had. Or we can be like, well, you know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna sharpen that tool over and over again. So that instead of adjusting to what he does best, he's gonna have to adjust to us.
Right.
So like, I'll use business, right? Like my personal training gym, right? The personal training is all over town, right? We do one-on-one private personal training. It's very secluded and everything. So instead of like trying to look at other companies and be like, oh, what are they doing? How do we get edge up on them? We just double down. Like, well, you know what? Like recently we've been like kind of remodeling the bathrooms and put that new office in and working on getting some different equipment. I'm like, we're just gonna double down on what I already know we do best.
Because you're competing with yourself
For sure.
before anybody else. How much better can I make myself to make them have to step up to my level?
For sure. 100%.
What does that mean you do differently daily? What would be your goals throughout every single day? Is there a Monday? My goal Monday is to get everything done. I mean, you're preparing for the week on a Sunday. You're not waiting around on a Monday to prepare for your week, for instance.
Yeah, every Sunday I do my schedule. And I try to do my whole schedule, right? Like block time out for things like this. I do that. That being said, my business partner finds it hilarious because he thinks schedule is the most important thing. And my life has got much better since I listened to him a little bit about that and schedule things a little better. But that is a huge factor in my productivity because if you don't, it's kind of like, well, if I get some free time, I'll get to that. As opposed to like, I have a day where I have a certain time of day every day. I go through leads that we have, right? I have a certain time of every week where I go through the numbers that are coming in and check all the accounts, right? And I have obviously clients all throughout the day. I have certain days that I have meetings set aside to go meet with my business partner about the other business. I have 2 days a week where I set aside a few hours a day just to go hand out flyers and gift cards to our new business, right? Just to get the name out there a little better. But like, I love this quote. It's one I've used a lot in my life, and it's proper preparation prevents poor performance, right? And that's how I look at my Sunday. My Sunday is my proper preparation, and it prevents me having poor performance throughout my entire week.
Allocating your time
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
to more efficiently. I think that's where business owners fail tremendously, honestly, because I see that a lot, especially when I coach other business owners and I'm walking in and I see their schedule and you could fly a plane through it. Number one, they don't put it in writing. Oh, I just know I have this or I just know I have that. No, 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 no. If it's not on paper, it doesn't happen. And if you've got that schedule you keep, you're going to get busy, so busy, you're not going to remember your schedule.
Oh, yeah.
If you got
I've been that business owner. So
So you get that one appointment in the week. That's not hard to forget. You get 50 of them. Now we're talking a little different schedule, right?
I think it was between talking to my business owner and one of my really good clients is a great client, but he's also a good friend. It's kind of like a relationship like we have. And one day I was in my office, but my door automatically locks when it closes, and I was waiting for him to show up, but I thought my door was open, and I wasn't paying attention to time. I was working on my computer, and I completely missed him. He showed up, couldn't get in, left. He's fairly upset about it. With all rights, right? He has to drive quite a ways, training my gym. He owns his own business too, right? So his time is valuable. Not that everyone's time is not valuable, but like, you have a different understanding of what your time means when you're running your own show, right? Like, okay. But that being said, like, it like hurt our relationship because, like, I just didn't answer I had my phone on silent, upside down, had no clue, and we ended up making it right and working it all out. But that was a thing, like, I didn't have it scheduled because I'm like, oh yeah, I train so-and-so that time every day of the week. I'll get to it. Like, I know, I remember it, but I'd gotten to the point that I was so busy that you don't remember. You don't like you said, you have to have it written down in front of you to where I can go, this, check the boxes, right? Like, make it simple, easy, fast, and efficient, right? So make it as simple as you can. You fail less.
Tell me a time where you failed, maybe let other people down, or maybe you let yourself down. You mentioned it earlier. You used to be 400 pounds, dude.
I was definitely let myself down then.
400 pounds. There's a lot of people out there in that situation. And how do they transform themselves to something like what sits in front of me today? That's a different person.
Yeah.
That's a whole different human.
Sure, I can give you a business and a fight example. Like, which one do you want? Both?
Well, let's start with the fight.
Okay. I had a fight coming up against an opponent who was not what we call a game opponent, right? Like, he wasn't extremely talented. I knew enough about him.
Yeah.
I did not prepare well at all. I kind of just let it roll off my back. I skipped a lot of practices. Skipped a lot of training. Went into the fight in horrible shape, and I lost. Right, and I lost to at the time. This has been years back. But at the time, it really hurt my career because I lost to a guy that. It's a thing to lose a fight, right? Anyone can, and there's some truth and some false to this, but people say anyone can win a fight, right? If me and you get in a fight, you hit me correctly, right? You could win. You could beat me. What people don't realize is, like, as trained athletes, right? Like, I've dedicated thousands of hours to that. So, like, the odds are slim, but it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I was fighting a guy that everyone knew I was going to win. It was a fight that we usually, when you go for a long break, you kind of have a fight that's like not as in you're a bigger name fighter. This happens in all divisions. You'll have a fight coming back where it's kind of knocking the dust off, right? Well, it didn't really work that way because guy dusted me. Just because bad preparation. Right, like I know that I remember the whole camp. I didn't do crap. I ate bad. Went into the fight looking terrible, heavy, right, and performed terrible. And then in business, these two businesses are my third businesses. I started my own eBay business. My dad runs an eBay business, so I had a great mentor. My dad runs a 6-figure eBay business. He's very successful at it. So I had a good mentor, give me good advice, and I took a lot of pride in my really small wins, but I never it's just like the same thing as like not attending practice, right? Like when I would make a little money, I'd be like, cool, yeah, we're good, right? Like we made a little money this month, like don't worry about it. And I failed that business. I ended up selling my store out to my dad, just to get out of it because I was bad upside down. It's just the same thing. It's just lack of preparation, not following the steps that you know need to be followed. And like that comes down to like needing the knowledge. Like if you don't know the steps and you're in a business, you don't know the steps and you're in a competition or in a fight, like you find a coach. Everybody needs a coach. Yep. And then you find a coach, you get the steps, you follow the steps. If you can do, it's like you're saying being teachable, right? If you can do those three things, right? Find someone that knows how to do it, right? Learn to listen to them, execute, success.
That's right there is where most people drop it. They'll
Execute?
listen. They'll listen.
For sure.
And they either get scared or they get overwhelmed, or maybe they just not quite sure of themselves yet to execute.
Both aspects take, probably my favorite human quality in any human I've ever met. Both aspects take courage. And people make the mistake that they think courage is like not being afraid, and courage is acting inside the face of fear. And if you're a business owner or a fighter or a single mom or anyone in today's crazy world, right, you face fear all the time, right? Like have a little courage. 5 seconds of courage, man, change your life. So
obviously you're going to fight again.
Oh yeah, no.
It's when I saw you come out of that fight, you're just, you got a few bumps and bruises and things like that. The other guy was pretty bad shape. They ended up calling the fight because he was just, I think he was out of it pretty much.
That sucks.
He the bell got rung, but he didn't go down, but he called it. So, I mean, you probably could have continued to kill the guy. That's the ref's job, right? To make sure that he gets in there and calls that fight in time. Tell me the difference in getting hit with a boxing glove, getting bare knuckle. I get the obvious, but there's some intimidation that comes in from getting hit bare knuckle versus a boxing glove.
Yeah, and I hadn't been I grew up in a fight, right? So I've had my fair share of street fights. I haven't had a street fight in, I don't know, probably 10 years, right? My head coach, when I went professional, my head coach used to tell me when I'd start to lose, I have bad temper. Really good reins on anymore, but I have pretty bad temper. And my head coach used to tell me hey, we make way too much money to fight for free. That's basically the line that he used that got me to quit street fighting. We make too much money to fight for free. I was like, all right, no, that's fair. So I'm backstage at this bare knuckle fight, and I'm sitting here and MMA fighters, at least you can see your fingers. But kickboxers, we're wearing boxing gloves. I'm sitting there and kind of looking at him man, that's it. You have a wrap on right there to brace your wrist and comes across your thumb one time. And I definitely was curious what it was going to feel like again, right? To get thumped in the head by someone. And
Curious.
I was curious. Been a long time. So there's a really defining line between a fighter and a bully, right? Now some bullies are great fighters, right, for a period of time. And the difference, here's the biggest difference in a fighter and a bully is both people love to hit people. They do. Fighters like to hit, we like to hit people, right? We wouldn't be in this business if we didn't. Bullies like to hit people, right? Fighters either don't mind or kind of enjoy getting hit back. Bullies don't. If you see someone and say it's kind of like warrior mentality, right? I like to fight, right? If you hit me, well, cool, we're gonna fight. I don't care who you are. Mike Tyson in your prime. What am I gonna lose, right? You beat me up, okay. I'm one of the endless names of people you beat up that no one remembers. If I win, the world knows my name tomorrow morning.
That's true.
The warrior mentality of that is just like to fight. Doesn't matter how it goes. I'm down to do it. Bullies like to pick on people, so they'll get in a fight and like to bully people. But someone's a bully if they say they have a career in fighting, and they come up against somebody that's putting a thumping on them, right? They'll lay down quick. Right? They want out of there. They're like, hey, I didn't sign up for this crap. But say they can even have a pretty successful career and get a devastating loss, and that's it. You never hear from that fighter again because they were just a bully, right? The fighting was fun for them when it was only winning, right? When it comes down to the struggle and hey, I could lose this, or that was a really rough fight, or that shit hurts, right? Then hey, that's not for me.
what they're willing to take. In other words, in my experience, bullies are usually insecure and they're taking it out on everybody else.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it's like they like to give it and they think that they're all puffed up. You know, the other day you're talking about handling snakes. And I think a good snake is a dead snake, right? So you're less like, it's no big deal. You grew up, your dad taught you how to handle it, you got to grab the snake and, whatever it is.
Should have brought one.
When I had my experience, it was just this big old black snake hissing at me, which if he'd have bit me, it wouldn't have killed me because it wasn't venomous. But I liken that to a bully. He's protecting his territory and or he's, whatever that is. And he's lashing out. But if he really bites, it's not going to hurt that bad or it's not going to really kill me, right? Whereas you take a rattlesnake, he can back up what he's rattling about because he can kill you. But if you know how to handle it, it's a little different. But those bullies are typically like that black snake just hissing at you.
A lot of show.
Yeah, a lot of show. And then when they get hit, like you said, it's like they fold like a cheap lawn chair, right? They've never really been hit. They never had someone stand up against their bulliness before. Just like you and I kind of have the same mentality. A man that'll hit a woman is the lowest of lows. And regardless, you got to be man enough to walk away, take the slap, take the hit, walk away. It is what it is, right? But a lot of people get mad, lose their temper, whatever, hit back, and that's where those lines get crossed. Same kind of thing when you have these battered women or battered children. You have this big bully that's never been challenged before, right? So I have seen bullies in my personal life growing up. I have seen bullies in business.
For sure.
That want you to do, like, they're just narcissists, man. They're just going to try to, manipulate you or, control you in some way, shape, or form. So in the business world, how do you protect yourself against those bullies? Because obviously we just can't walk up and hit them, obviously. But
it's frowned upon.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we don't want to. It doesn't mean they don't deserve it, for sure. But getting that, how do you handle that now, being a fighter? Because, you get in the head a couple of times, it pisses you off. It makes you, it almost like, okay, all right, now we're dialed in. I get it. But what does that mean on the business side for you?
I don't have to, and this isn't like a flex, I don't have to deal with it much. My entire, outside, directed at me. And for the entirety of my life, I have had a strong disdain for bullies, right? I didn't like watching kids getting bullied, which is funny if you see me around my friends, because you know how I act. Like, I pick on my friends really rough. That's how you know I care about you. If I'm pretty rough on you, it's like, oh, Haze likes that person. But I don't like people being bullied. So I've almost, throughout the entirety of my life, if I find someone bullying someone, I'll be the guy to be like, hey, knock it off. They've had enough of that. But I feel the same aspect in my business. I don't feel like other people try to bully me around. Like I said, not sounding like egotistical, but maybe my persona or something. But I have no tolerance for it, and I don't think anyone should. Right? Like, some big company comes around and they're like, hey, you're gonna do it this way because we said, and I'll be like, no, we're not. That's just not how it's gonna work, right? If it came down to, well, we have the legal standing or whatever, but you built this business, right? And you make it function, and they don't have anything to do with it. So, what are they gonna do, right? You're a fighter, and you're a fighter, and you know you're a fighter, and you know what you're capable of. And somebody starts talking crap, and it's like, hey, man, just keep it over there because I know what I can do, and just don't make me do it.
Someone may want to be a fighter. They may want to be a business owner. Okay? They have no idea what it's going to take to do that.
No.
Initially. You have somebody come and say, hey, Haze, I want to be a fighter. You'll be like, okay. At that moment, what is your plan to make them decide whether they want to lean in or realize this is not for me?
This will be transparent across the board, right? As being someone comes and says, I want to be a fighter. Same as someone came to me and said, I want to be a business owner. Depending on how serious I take them, it depends on where I go. I might instantly, if I knew the person well enough, I'd be like, you don't want to do that. It's a bad idea, right? And that's not me trying to belittle them or what they're capable of. But that's just me worrying about their future in that aspect, right? I'm sure you have friends that are excellent human beings that if they came to you and they were like, hey, I want to own a business, and you're like, I don't think it's for you. and it's just not for them because you own a business, right? You know what the struggles are like, and like, man, I don't know if Bob went through that. I don't know how well Bob could take it for how long. And you probably have some friends that you feel like could do great in business. Same with fighting. So people come to me, hey, I want to be a fighter. Let's say I don't know anything about it. Okay, so I have nothing to prejudge on. Hey, I want to know business. Nothing to prejudge on. Okay, like, what do you want to do? You want to be a fighter? You want to box? You want to kickbox? Do MMA? What kind of business do you want to run? What do you want to sell? Right? What are you trying to get into? We'll talk about that. What do you know about it? Right? Let's see where we're starting at. All right. Maybe, okay, I have some experience, or so-and-so did this, or I studied here, or I messed around with this gym. I'm like, okay, so now I have a little base. Maybe not. Maybe like nothing. Never done any of it. Never owned a business. Never thrown a punch. So then we're going to go ground zero basics, right? And throughout the process of owning a business or starting a business or thinking that you want to start a business, and through the process of thinking you want to be a fighter, to the end result, there are a whole lot of checkpoints where I'm going to run people through to be like, are you sure you want to do this? One of my clients last night, he put it really well. Gifted kid, right? Really, really gifted, young, good with his hands. He takes on the technique really fast. Trains at my gym, and he could probably have a decent shot at like someday being a world champion kickboxer. Like, so he's young, right? He's like 15. He picks up really good, does really good. So last night, want to do something new that he never done. So we sparred last night. And like, I've really good, like, I pride myself in my control, right? I spar my 120-pound girlfriend all the time. Like, not there to hurt him. So I sparred him last night. It was just putting it like he's checked a lot of paces, right? He's consistent when he shows up. He trains hard. He does what he's told, right? He's very good at absorbing knowledge, right? Like, we went through all these blocks that would apply to business or being a fighter, right? He's checked all these boxes. So, okay, this is a tough one. Let's see how well you do when it comes to hitting another human. Because believe it or not, a lot of people don't punch people well. Like, if I put it, like, you could be like, yeah, I want to be a fighter. I'd be like, if I want to test you really quick and hard, I'd be like, cool, put those gloves on, come over here, punch me in the face. Like most people, especially if they know you at all or have any kind of relationship with you, they get over there and they're like, can I punch your chest or your shoulder a little bit? And it's like, no, like, rip it. Let me have one. Give me that, give me your best shot. And they're like, oh, I want to hit you. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, I'm not mad at you. I'm like, well, being mad is not being a fighter, right? Like, I don't go to the ring mad at my opponent. It's like something you turn on and off, right? It's like when you should, like, hopefully, and every day, this doesn't go home with you, right? But like when you come to work, or when you're going to work, you turn it on. Like, your game face on. You know how to go. And when you're done, you're like, all right, I'm done with that for now. Like, I'm gonna relax. I'm gonna chill at the pool. I've seen the pool. Well, I know you. So we sparred for the first time, and while we're sparring, he mentioned something to me that was very profound, and he didn't even know it, because someone said something to him, and like, I wasn't whooping him, but he was having a really hard time hitting me with anything, right? And like, which to be expected. I've a decade more knowledge on the aspect than he does, right? So like, I'm kind of toying with him, teaching him what we're working, having a hard time hitting me on. His friend was there and said something. He's like, yeah, he turned to his friends like, yeah, everything I thought I knew about fighting, I don't know nothing.
Wow.
And it's like, that was very profound in the moment. And that can be applied both ways, right? Like, you think you want to run a business, before you just start a business, get a little experience in there, because you might find out like, hey, this isn't great. A good friend of mine used to work for me, started his own business here recently. He's doing good. We often used to talk about business, kind of help bring him up to get his own business. And it's kind of like training a fighter, right? Time the ins and outs, how it works. He started his own personal training place, a lot like mine. And from the employee standpoint, he sits back and, like, from the fighter standpoint, or from the spectator standpoint, you sit back and you look at a fighter. We'll say spectator is kind of like employee. And you see a fighter, man, it's nothing, right? You go to the show, I whoop this guy, I collect a paycheck, easy. Give me some of that life, right? You don't see oh yeah, you break that paycheck down, I made like 50 cents an hour on the 1,500 hours I put into training for this fight, right? Right? I missed, like, my dad's birthday party, and I had to run laps after, my brother's graduation, like, I mean? Like, I take sweats everywhere I go with me, and all, you don't see all that. To you, it's just like, oh, step in the ring, ring the bell. 3 minutes later, this guy's getting paid. That's a great deal. Well, from the business standpoint, as looking from not a spectator, but the employee, my buddy was like, man, if I ever brought up money issues, he's like, whatever, dude, you got it made. And as a business owner, you see a lot more money. You do a really good job of taking that money from point A to point B. And you're kind of like the carrier pigeon, right? Takes you a long time, a lot of hard work before you're pulling it out of the middle as it comes by. You're just like, okay, yeah, I see a lot of money come in the door. And I also use it to pay the electricity and the rent and you, right? And like everything, like the mountains that goes into owning a business. But from the employee point of view, they don't see that. They don't see all the work and all the distribution. They just go like, well, you got to have it made, man. Right. I know all the money we just made you. From the spectator point of view, right, looking at the fighter, it's like, well, you got it made, man. That was easy. You won that fight in 4 minutes. They gave you a big old check for it. And it's like, well, it doesn't really break down that way. So the same aspects can be applied to training both. Now that he owns his own business, it's great having conversations with him, because when we're having conversations, he'll be like, yeah, man, this costs a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, it does. Same thing with fighters, right? I've had fighters come up. I've trained a few fighters who went amateur, a couple fighters who went pro. And like when they started, it was like the eyes are always on the lights from both points of view, right? Like somebody wants to own a business, we'll call the lights like your house, right? The eyes are, oh man, I'm gonna get there, right? Or if somebody's looking at becoming a fighter, like they're looking at your titles, your belts, like, oh man, like that's the goal, right? Like we're gonna get there. But it's a long road and it's not straight.
That's right. And everybody wants to be a success until they see what it takes to get there.
Amen.
So that 15-year-old said something profound. And at 15 years old, I've tutored and mentored guys in different businesses that were 45, 50 years old, almost my age. And you'd never hear the words that 15-year-old said. Wow. I thought I knew about fighting. I know nothing, right? I thought I knew about business. I know nothing, right? And that epiphany, that absolution, almost like a level of your brain that finally gets there and goes, I don't know everything. I think we'd all like to go back to 18 years old when we do everything, right?
Yeah, I miss it. I don't know where it all went.
We had it all figured out, right? But that understanding now is deeper and wider than I ever thought it would be, because even now in business, and I have coaches and mentors even still at my level, and those guys are at another level. The idea of coming into a business and realizing you know it all is the worst possible thing you could do. And confirm that with me, because that's the same thing a fighter. You think you know it all when you walk in that ring?
You're in trouble.
That's when you get in trouble. That's right.
Yeah, I can relate that to business, because like you know a lot about something until you realize you don't, right? It doesn't matter what field it is on the planet. It doesn't matter if that's insurance or physical fitness, right? Like there's been things that I have known were fact beyond a shadow of a doubt, like this is how this works. It's not. And you find people like teachable or not teachable. You find some people like, I can admit that I don't know everything about business. I can admit that I don't know everything about fitness. I can admit that I don't know everything about fighting, right? Like you said earlier, you said like, well, if you stop learning, you stop growing. You stop growing, you're stagnant, you die.
Right.
Well, being able to admit that, it's hard for some people. Some people don't want to well, I'm successful and I've got this far on my own. I think instead of just grow or do any better, I'll stay right here because I know what I'm doing. And it's like, well, you don't, and I'd love to help you, but I can't help you with that attitude.
Take me back to your 400 pounds.
Okay.
You made the decision you want to be a fighter.
Yeah.
Walk me through what happened.
400-pound me. Let's see. Let's cover how we got there. So we graduated high school. We're a fairly athletic country boy, right? We're 240, 260 pounds, around there. Lineman, built like a barrel, built like I'm built now. And I was a power lifter, and I ate everything under the sun. I had 4 brothers, so you that's what you tend to do. If you get a hold of it, you eat it. But that being said, quit football, stayed in my hometown. My dad ran a construction company. I stayed in my hometown because I was in love with this girl. Didn't really pan out, obviously. Things don't when you're 17, 18 years old.
Say it ain't so.
Oh, no. But thank the Lord. But I kept eating like I was a football player, powerlifter, right? Like that never changed. So it didn't take me long. Graduated at 18. By 24, I was 400 pounds. And my big brother, which I bet he would love to hear this from me because he does not like that I fight a whole lot. My big brother and my dad don't like it much. Support it, but with a little disdain.
Yeah.
But my big brother bought me a pair of boxing gloves, 2 pairs. And I didn't know nothing about boxing. I just like to fight people. So anybody that would strap those boxing gloves on, big 400-pound me, like, it didn't matter if it's at the fairgrounds or at the rodeo or my backyard or one time we got arrested on Main Street. Right? Like, if anyone strapped those boxing, age didn't matter, size didn't matter. You put those boxing gloves on, we go. And I boxed 81 backyard boxing matches, right? Like, and I had a bad habit then that I carried on into my fight career. Is like I like to let people hit me, because like I told you earlier, generally you put gloves on someone, they can't hit a person. Well, it's no fun to spar somebody who won't hit you. So I put gloves on them and I drop my hands and I'm like, let's go. And like they wouldn't hit me and I'm like, let's go. They wouldn't hit me and I pop them a little bit. I'm like, let's go. Like, until I made them mad and they hit me. I'm like, okay, now you're hitting me. Like now we're fighting. Anyway, gain all this weight, do all this backyard boxing. I've always been strong, but I was also surrounded by like family and friends, and no one would just tell me like I'm pretty blunt when it comes to telling people this. Obviously, you know, I'm pretty blunt. But like if I see someone that's overweight, I'm like, hey man, you gotta lose some weight. You're big. Like you're. I don't like calling people fat because I feel like it's kind of a diss. But I'm like, you're heavy. You're too heavy. And no one would tell me that. Everyone's like, oh, Haze, you look great, man. You're just strong. You carry your weight great. And I was fat. I have pictures. I look like I got stung by a whole bunch of bees, right? A distant friend of mine, my dad I did work for my dad's construction company. And my dad quit doing that, and I had to find a job. I ended up working out here in Tulsa. I was living just outside Bartlesville. And a distant friend of mine, he was like, my family owns a kickboxing gym there in Bartlesville. I was like, oh, go check it out and see if you're really any good. In hindsight, he was probably trying to get my ass whooped. But I went in there and it was hole-in-the-wall gym at the time. They fixed it up nice and simple. It was Team Rouse, kickboxing. I go in there. We broke in every night. Now, the owner knew, but like he didn't show up anymore at the time. The building had been flooded. It used to be in a different location. Like, so we broke in, had one heavy bag, solid concrete floor, thin carpet on it, one wall of mirrors. Room was this big, maybe. I show up. I'm like, hey, I'm here to fight. Those guys didn't know me, but they're like, okay. And that was like the school of hard knocks, right? Like you went in there and you just beat the fire out of each other every night. And the owner's son, who was a pretty established kickboxer at the time, came in one night and we were sparring and we had shin guards and everything on. And I just beat the crap out of each other. And I kicked him in the head. Well, obviously, being a 400-pound guy, throwing my leg 6 foot high, he was just like, it's not that I hurt him or anything, but he was just in awe. He was like, man. So he told his dad about me. His dad comes to the gym. His dad was the owner, Mr. Rouse, Coach Rouse. And he goes, hey, you show up every day for 3 months, I'll put you on an amateur fight card. Sweet. Showed up every day for 3 months, right? He basically just had me throw 1-2 in the mirror, drove me nuts, right? But start at the ground when you don't know nothing. 3 months, show up every day, get on a fight card. Go to the fight. I was still heavy enough. I think I was 387 for my first fight. Embarrassed enough that I wore a t-shirt. I wore a shirt over my body.
Yeah.
And I remember walking out there, and I'd only ever done backyard boxing. And in backyard boxing, when you hurt your opponent, they quit. Right? There's no rounds, there's no timers, there's no knockouts generally, because like once you hit someone, hurt them. I mean, it's kind of evolved over the years, but back then you hit someone, hurt them, like, hey, I'm done, man. It's okay, you're done, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm walking out the ring, and I tell Mr. Rouse, I'm like, Coach, I don't think I can knock him out with these gloves on. Because I've done a lot of fighting, knocked guys out, but not with boxing gloves on. I've done a lot of backyard boxing, but never knocked anybody out. And he goes, you'll be fine. 16 seconds later, I knocked him out. Dale Apollo Cook happened to be there, which is kind of strange because he very, very rarely goes to that show. I mean, in the 10 years I've known him, I bet he's attended it 4 times.
Wow.
But he happened to be there. He was our special guest for our intermission. Got up, spoke in the ring, who he was, introducing everyone. Most of them knew him anyway. And years later, Not even. We'll say maybe a year later, I was moving to Tulsa because I was working down here and I got a better gig to live, so I have to drive so far every day. And they're like, well, I told Mr. Rouse, I was like, I'll drive back every day. Didn't want to give up my gym, right? Guy got me my start. And I was like, I'll just drive back every day and train. And he's like, no. And he gave me Mr. Cook. He's like, here's what you do. He's like, go to Apollo's Martial Arts, right? 51st and Mingo. You meet a lady named Jamie Harris at the front desk. She'll be expecting you. Tell her who you are, right? And they'll take you into their fighter class. And I walked in there. I met Jamie Harris. It's been a godsend to my life. And went back in the back and met Brett Richardson, who still coaches me on occasion, helps me with new techniques, and Mike Egan, who was Mr. Cook's coach in his time, and he was my first real professional head coach. And unlike any other, you'd love him. But the rest is kind of history. Started training there, fought a couple more amateur fights, went pro. Here we are.
It's interesting to know the story from.
Got in shape along the way.
That's what I was about to say. It's coming from 400 pounds to the warrior you are today. And warriors take evolution. It's an evolution as a warrior. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, there's a quote, and I can't remember who it's by to save my life, but it's that warriors aren't born, they're forged.
Man, I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, man.
This is awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Love it.